Do we have the right to destroy it? The whole issues are what is life? When is life? What is life? How is it? And this is 1970s. We didn't have, in the 1970s, we did not have the information we now have concerning heartbeats, brain waves, all the things. You know, the idea of a clump of cells was a clump of cells.
We have
the book.
This like angelic limelight shining down. Is that you, Renee?
No.
You've had people ask if you write an autobiography.
Yes, this is not an autobiography. This is a fiction book. And actually, I did use you as a type in here. So there's the running thing and all that. But I got the cover. It's really super cool.
I love the cover and the red.
Yes, but there was a fight for because I put it up on Instagram or whatever it is, Instagram, Facebook, and I had 3 covers to choose from, and there was very big conversation about which cover it should be. And then my dear friend Eva Marie Everson, whose book is coming out, she's prolifically wonderful writer, and she goes, and as soon as she put this on there, I was like, game over. I don't care how anybody votes. She says the cover has to have on the cover the person that it's about. And I'm like, okay, so this is it. This is Tabitha Bonaparte Hayes.
Okay, so she's our special guest on Moral Podcast, Tabitha.
Yeah.
How many people have asked you if it's an autobiography and if it's that, and if Tabitha is you on the cover?
I have been, and it was weird
because you were saying that the other day.
It is so crazy, Integrate, because you write something, and you know this as well as with blogs and things like this, but I don't know if you've written fiction much.
Barely any fiction.
Yeah, so it's a very odd thing, writing fiction. And for people to come up, and I mean, literally I've had that question 2 or 3 times now, and I'm going, well, I mean, you know, because we write, anything you write, you're going to borrow things from your life, you know, bits and pieces of it. But all in all, the word fiction, there is such a thing as narrative fiction when you're modeling off of somebody. You know, there's really great narrative fiction out there that tells the tells a biography of somebody's life. But the nature of fiction is you're making it up, you know.
Well, you spent how many years did you spend writing this book? Because I have seen you from one house to another. I think you started on what I called the holy porch of your other one, because it was like collaborative at first, then it branched into just like your brainchild. And I've seen you work through like, honestly, some of the craziest seasons of your life writing this. So like, tell us how long.
Okay, well, I always, I know I've said this, since 2nd grade, I just loved to write. Just loved. You know I have that little white composition book, white and speckled, black speckled composition book somewhere in my stuff. So I've always loved to write. I always liked to sign my name at it, and I would always sign it Renee Leonard. And so I did it in high school. I would write with the intention. Then, of course, I wanted to be an actress, so I was going to do that. And then I pivoted. And I had a really dear friend who said to me, I said, you know, I'm not going to do the acting thing. I think I'm going to go to writing. She goes, I always knew this is the way you would go in college. So I pursued it in college, and then with the idea, too, that, you know, I was just going to go my way and be rebellious. And then I got an opportunity to work in the movie industry, so I did that. I did that for years. And, you know, you have kids, you have that. You have an environment when your writing is not really welcome, you know, or whatever the case may be. So I literally, what was it, 26, 30 years off writing, except for journaling. And in between all that, I became a Christian. And I kept saying, Lord, when am I going to get a book? When am I going to get a book? And it had to be I don't know how many years into my walk, I just finally gave up that I wasn't going to get a book. I just wasn't going to get anything.
So your dream was like, I want to publish a book.
You know, I had always, because I love to write, and I'm like, when am I going to get an idea, Lord? And I think at this point, I really do integrate, I think I was going through the Old Testament and New Testament, and I was being taught how to write really good stories because there's some really hot dang stories in there. I mean,
Song of Songs for poetry.
Yeah, but you just go to Genesis and you're like, what?
It's pretty trippy.
Yeah, it's really, really trippy.
Creation of the world and stuff.
You get to hear the beautiful poetry and the crying out to the Lord in Psalms, and you know, all the way to Revelation that is using such imagery. So I think that was part of my training, and then in 2017, I said, I'm going to get back into it. And everyone, or somebody had said, you need to go to a writing conference. So I went to a writing conference. And everybody was talking about it. Yeah, what are you writing? And I'm like, I don't know, you know. And so...
so this wasn't even an idea at this point. You're just like, I want to do something.
And then I think in the long run, I gave my brain permission to start imagining, like, wait, you're so flustered about how you're going to go about this. Just you know, write out, you know, a plot line. And so I just started writing it out, and I had this character. I always knew the book was going to be called Tissue, always. And so I just started writing, and then I did all these plot points, you know, pages and pages of this is what's going to happen next. And then my daughter got into cheerleading, the youngest, and so she would go, and I would stay. So we would go. I'd go up in the loft of her cheerleading, and so to the count of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I would be on my computer, just writing, and I would hit each plot point. And so this is in 2018, and it was in first person. But there was a lot more to it, and your mom can tell you the whole story, because there was all these other things. You know, it was going to be in, someone had suggested I turn it into just other women's stories and blah, 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 and all this. And I kept just thinking, I just want to write this. So I wrote it, and I remember being upstairs in that cheerleading loft. And putting the end on my first
and the
draft.
angelic limelight shines down.
It was just like... Zzz.
With the gym floor squeaking.
Yeah, and it may have even been 2019.
But you worked on this for 8 to 9 years then?
Yeah. And then I remember, because then they tell you to put it aside for about 3 months or something. So I put it...
Really?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Because you're too close to it.
Okay, so they need you to like emotionally detach that to like let your brain kind of revamp.
And then they tell you, I followed the Stephen Pressfield. I love Stephen Pressfield. And he's like, then pick it up and read it. And or somebody else was saying this, but don't make any changes on it. And that was when I was on the porch.
The holy porch?
The holy porch, July 4th, 2019, when the tree fell on. And I was
a tree fell on Renee's house.
And I was 5 minutes from being blown to bits by an 86,000 pound tree. But that was the first draft. This was the first draft. Ooh. I was reading the first draft of this book. And it was obliterated. Okay, so I want to go back into the past just a little bit. Yeah. Because you write fiction. You've written nonfiction, too, because you wrote After the Flowers Die, which is crazy to think that, like, you published that, and now a novel you've worked on for 8 to 9 years. So between your blogs and the stuff, you know, you post on social and the content you write now, what kind of things were you into when you were younger? Like when you were writing, like did you have particular topics you were into or books you liked writing? Oh, yes. Because there's like a huge contrast, I feel. Yes. Maybe I'm wrong, but no, I mean, if you want to dive into that. Well, I do. What inspired you? Obviously, I was a non-Christian then. I was not a believer, so I wasn't going to write Christian stuff. So are you like in your 20s, 30s? Yeah, and so I wrote, and well, one, I was 14 years old. I had to just look around the house to find the nearest, bodice ripper. And so I grabbed that, and I was voraciously reading them. Well, I was also reading about Christy Marshall and all. So it was like a really torn between reading Christian things and reading bodice rippers, and they won.
As in erotic novels?
They didn't call them erotic then. They just
bodice
called them
rippers.
romance.
I'm sorry.
They called them romance.
Okay.
And so, but they were
bodices fly out the window.
These people, like this lady, Catherine. I forget what her name was, but she literally sent this gigantic script to New York City, and someone bought it, and she sold 50 million copies or something like that. It was an incredible story. However, so I immersed myself into that when I was 14, so that fast forward when I was in college, I was really into poetry. I wanted to be a serious poet. I did some neat things in poetry there. But then, in the move up to North Carolina, I did write a fiction that is somewhere down in the hard drives of the annals of my basement. But it was
no way.
It was basically, it wasn't erotica, but it was basically it was a story with sex.
Whoa! So this is like on a deep, dark hard drive.
Yeah, deep.
I didn't know that.
I was in my early 30s.
Okay.
But then I also did a 500-page single-line journal, and so, but for this,
after the erotic novel, let me journal about my day.
but I would write in college. I wrote, serious fiction, and a lot of it was very existential and very.
What drew you to fiction, particularly?
I would say that's what I loved from the very beginning. Just the story. I love story, and I think that's the heart of God. He has a story to tell. The beautiful missionaries used to come to my school, and on the flannel board, they would start telling these wonderful stories. They would put up, and there were some of these men walking around following this man named Jesus and all this, and I would always want to help them put the flannel on the board. So the stories.
So your wheels are always turning, like, for you, is fiction something where you can create a world of your own, yet it's inspired by things you've been through? Yeah,
and it is just so much fun. It is so much fun. So how did I get, so do you want me to tell the rest of the story?
Yeah, how do we go from erotica to what you're into now?
Well, I mean, obviously there was
like
a major faith change. It was Christ. But in 2019, or 2019, then I started worrying, doing more of the writing conferences and all this. So I get, I start wondering what else I should write. I get with a publisher, and she says, well, send me this. So I sent her this, and this was my nonfiction. And she says, this is what I want. And so I wrote, and it was called After the Flowers Die, which is done decently well, and it's helping people, which is really, really great. And then...
And After the Flowers Die is nonfiction.
It is nonfiction. And then after that, she goes, what are you going to write next? She asked me a question that. I'm like, so I sent her 5 fiction ideas that I had, Tissue being one of them. And she'd heard me talk about it. She goes, let's go with that. And I'm like, oh. And I had worked on it, but that sucker had grown up to like 104K words. Is a very big book. So there was a lot of, it's been, the last 2 years has been a lot of rewriting.
I've seen that behind the scenes. Like, I'll think, oh, it's finished, and you're like, I'm re-editing it. I'm like, wait, I thought you edited the book already.
But, it's weird because you want to let your imagination go where it goes. And so it was going through all these streams of different things. And then you're like, okay, I don't really need this, and so you start paring things down. So what happened is midway into the rewrites of this, between, I guess, 2022 and when it released, was I realized I'm not one of these plot people who has to know where they go. In fact, I like going off-road, and it makes sense with my personality. So I started to play and allowed wild things to happen. And when wild things happened and the characters did something that totally surprised me, I'm like, Yeah, this.
So you just kind of let your imagination
I really
go wild,
had fun, and that is the wild thing, because I thought everybody thought in terms of story, and I don't know how people think. I just really don't, because some people go. I had a friend who's a writer of poetry, and she goes, "Is this based on your own story?" And I'm like, "No." She goes, and she's real quiet, and we're in Bible study. She's real quiet. She goes, "You have a very vivid imagination."
Wow. You're like, is that a compliment or an insult?
Yeah, I was just like,
wow.
But no, I consider it a compliment. And so the deal is, I think the idea, if someone may know you and they just know your life and how you are, and then they see that you write something and they assume that you have to base it on something that you've actually lived in
your autobiography that's not an autobiography.
Yeah. So I mean, the idea of creating and then somebody said yesterday, she said something about North Carolina towns, and she goes, "Well, you know a lot about them." And I look at her and I'm like, "What?" And she goes, "Well, you wrote about one." I said, "I made that town up."
Was this from tissue?
Yes. And she started, because she had read it. She goes, she started laughing. Because, I mean, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah. It's interesting, because when I've been reading it, I'm like, oh, all these are familiar. Yeah. But I would probably have the same question, too, of like, oh, is this a hidden gem? Yeah. Actually, it's made up out of thin air, but in the book.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you in just a second more of like the heart of why you wrote what you wrote about, because you tackle a really not just taboo topic in your book, but it's something that really hits close to home, I think, for a lot of people. And I imagine writing it, you probably had so many thoughts going through your head of like, how do I convey the heart of this in the correct way, and it being, a story that's like going from nonfiction to fiction, which, I mean, I know you already were writing fiction. I'm spilling water on myself. But you said you took a 26-year gap beforehand. So I'm curious, like, what caused the gap, and what was the point in which you thought, I'm gonna start this? Like, I know you started it in the cheerleading zone, but I'm just curious what happened in that gap, and when you finally had that, I don't know, mustard seed of faith to just do it.
Well, yes, and it was a mustard seed. I believe I allowed myself to listen to outside voices about what I should and shouldn't do.
Like societal expectations?
Yeah, well, not even societal. Ooh. I think it was relational. And not feeling an environment where it was welcome to write and do something creative like that. It was odd, because we could do other creative things, but we can't. You can't do that. And I can only think that it must have felt dangerous, or maybe secretive, in the sense that here I am writing on my computer, and it wasn't perceived as a safe thing by the other party that I lived with. I don't know what it is. And I could see that. Or it could be a jealousy that, wait, you're rushing up to do this. This is bringing you life, and I want a part of this. And there's no way. When you're in the writing process, you share with your family. You share, but unless you're doing a joint writing project, you're on your own. And so I think there was a little bit of that going on, and a lot of that going on, and it just did not... I allowed myself... There's two things going on. I felt the dissatisfaction of doing that work from another party, but then I also allowed myself to be cowed and not do it and fight for it. And I did that for 26 years. So it was a much larger problem, but it just came out really evidently in the writing. I mean, in the writing bit.
So you felt like that part of you is suppressed, like, whereas it's something that would spark joy.
But I also allowed myself to be suppressed instead of fighting for it. And then one day I woke up and I said, I'm going to go to a writing conference. I put my foot down and I just said, I'm going to go do this.
Whoa, was this like an impulsive, just like, last minute kind of thing?
No, well, everything in a way is impulsive at one point. Because
not in a bad way. But
well, yeah, to become concrete. So no, I just, it just felt that this was the time. The kids were at a certain place. Everybody was, and I realized time was marching on for me, and I wanted to do some things, and this was one of them. And so I fought for it, and I didn't even have to fight for it. Well, not in the ugly sense of fight for it. It's just simply I had to put my foot down and saying, I'm going to go do this, and I did.
And here we are. Also, I don't think we said the name of it maybe once, but it's called Tissue. Yes. So within Tissue, this is where I suppose we get, and you can speak as much or as little as you want on, I don't want to give any spoilers out. So how did you choose to write about the topic that you did, and how did you create your characters? Because it's a really, I keep saying taboo topic, but it's just one of those that is, we see it all over the mainstream media. Everyone has very, very, very strong opinions on it, but you chose to not only have the bravery to write again after 26 years of not writing, but also to cover what you did.
I think that 26 years of not feeling and not stepping up to the plate made me a little more fierce about this one. So Tissue, I would go into conferences and say, I want to write a book, a fiction book on abortion. And everybody will look at you and they go, oh, no, you can't do that.
No man's land.
Yeah,
okay.
You can't do that. And I'm like, okay, but it's not just about abortion. It's really about the life of this woman, this young woman. And I would take my synopsis up to different publishers. And they were, they had incredible names where they sounded like they would, welcome something that kind of rocks the boat and speaks on things like this. And I remember handing it to one publisher, and she said, well, you can write. She goes, but we can't tackle this topic.
Ooh.
And so I got that consistently. I also got some really good words of advice, and I mentioned it in there from a man named Kyle Young, whom I respect greatly. But he said, Renee, you just can't write about that. It just can't be about that. And he was the inspiration behind that, because I realized I wanted to write the story in a way that asked the question, okay, is this a good thing to do? What do we think about abortion? And what happens in the life of a person? What goes down? What was society like in the 1970s, and particularly in 1974 when Roe versus Wade came in? And so it's set in 1974. Where was I when I was in that? I was a little younger than this character, but I just remember the world was clashing, and so that is what I'm writing about, is how the world is clashing, how different society things were going on, and so that is how it came out, and that's I have a there's no other way to say it. Is I think we grow up with certain things that we really truly believe in, and there was a situation in my life where I was under a relative's table, and I heard another relative talking about, and what it turns out, I was really young, I didn't understand it at the time, but it was enough where I'm going, I don't know what that is. It was so much more that I asked somebody later on about it when I was, in my 20s, and they said, no, that person had had an abortion. And I'm like, it affected me as a child. I knew something was, I couldn't tell what was, and so I wanted to work this out. But as a young woman in high school who had shut her Bible at 16, it came a history debate class, and the history teacher says, who wants to be pro-life? I raised my hand.
Interesting.
And
so even if when you peeled away from more your religious beliefs, you still...
I mean, I was on my way to atheism.
Wow.
You know, so much so that when I was an atheist, I was incredibly pro-life. And there's one reason, and it makes total sense to me. Someone may argue it down, but like if you only get one time to be on this world, why would you want to end? If you believe in atheism that much, why would you want to end the life of another person who you think is only going to have one chance in this world? Why take it away from them? So I didn't understand it. I didn't understand abortion. So fast forward, I become a Christian, and my pro-life stance is very, very strengthened. And all I can say is read Psalm 139. It'll do a lot for you. So then it came to making this real for the character. What goes on with this? What goes on with this error? How is she negotiating all the things that she has to go through? And I'm not going to tell you whether she did or didn't. I'm not going to tell you any of those things. It's on Amazon, look under Renee Leonard Kennedy and Tissue. But I've gotten some really great feedback on it.
I was going to say the main character, Tabitha, is so realistic and also complex to me because when your book released and everyone was getting the book they had pre-ordered, and there were so many people saying, I could not put it down.
Yes, they did.
I could not put it down. And so obviously I did not, okay, so I'm usually a nonfiction reader, right?
Okay.
So like
the fact that you picked it up, I was really happy.
Okay, like I would want to read anything someone spent 8 to 9 years on, whether it's sci-fi fiction about like the flying spaghetti monster or what. Like I would genuinely want to, but the very first chapter, and especially chapter 2 though, which I will not disclose. I was like,
bang up one.
It is not at all that I had doubts and like this is gonna be a like jam up job of a novel. But I was so hooked because I was like, that was so intense. Like it is, I don't know how to describe it other than like literally the first 2 chapters have this way of captivating you and grabbing you, and it's not too intense, but it's enough to where you're just like, okay, I have to keep reading. And I have to get to the next chapter. And yeah, like I was surprised at what you covered in the first 2 chapters because it wasn't too much, regarding everything you're writing about, but it was so surprising to me, but in a really good way. Because like usually I feel like that was something that would come more towards like the middle of the book. And so I was sort of like, okay, it's going to be like probably a longer intro, lots and lots of character development. I don't want to give any spoilers or give anything away, but how did you decide to format it in the way you did? Like,
that's a great question.
Because you've done so many edits.
Well, I
on
have
this
done
book
so,
too.
and I will tell you, it's amazing how much I kicked out 96 pages, typewritten pages out of here. I had help of the editor, but I personally did my own. And a lot of it is you want to pick up the rhythm of the story and you see where it's going. And after you read it enough, you're going, wow, this needs to go, this needs to go. However, this is very, very wild because I do have screenwriting experience. And so my screenwriting, you have to grab them in the first. You have to have a hook, and you have so few
People
minutes.
get bored in like 30 seconds.
So
60
everything
seconds.
has to happen bang up big. So actually, chapter 2 was the first chapter.
No way.
It was, but
oh man, so you were going in like really.
I realized it really needed to. There needed to be something. If you just take it on that, you don't have the heart of the Tabitha without having that first chapter in there.
Yeah.
So you need to have the heart. I like the pacing in it.
Yeah.
Because it's that, and then chapter 2, and then on and on and on. And so that is how you play with it a lot, but it's just one of these things that you have to be judicious and just, what did they always say in homeschool? You have to cut out your darlings.
Oh, there's the ministry dog.
She knew it. But you have to cut out your darlings. And so there are a lot of things that need to be cut, which intensifies the pace. Another thing is, if things are going happily ever after in a book, that should be the ending. And so you do think, but there was a lot of things I learned. I learned that things can happen to characters, but if they're just outside sources, it's not as a big thing. Like all of a sudden someone pulled a knife on them or something. But if it's a lover pulling,
is it a slasher book?
Yeah, Renee? No, but if it's a lover pulling a knife on you, it's a different story. That intensifies. If it's personal, so all the things that had to happen to all these people had to be personal to them, and they had to, strike at their heart, and so that was fun. I also learned, this is the wildest thing, Anna Gray, because we talk about male-female differences all the time. I would be sitting there at my typewriter, like, how would Josh put this? How would Josh put this? Because Renee would just...
As in you're trying to think like a man?
Yeah, I was trying to think like a man. Because men don't go, they don't go da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And then I stopped by Kmart because I needed,
think of the shortest route possible.
It's like, I got the gift.
So as in you're saying, wow, the men were the simplest, right?
Yeah, well, no, they weren't. They weren't because I needed to write in their voice and then for them to react. They're not going to always react the way that we expect.
Well, there's some guys I like and hate in this book.
Yes.
And I'm not going to disclose all of their attributes. But I told my mother and used a very choice word for one of them. Yes. So this guy's up. Fill in the blank.
Yeah, Chase is a nasty guy.
Yeah.
But I will tell you this. Your mom, because she was one of my main... pre-editor editors, and she worked with me to the very end.
I saw a lot of pictures and read it.
Yeah, because I would say, read this, and like when I say to your mom, like, kill the darlings, like she'll just go, oh, this is ridiculous, and then she'll sit there and I don't know, Renee's going to take offense. I'm like, no, this is why I want you to read it. So I said to her about this character, I said, I need to, and I know his backstory. I know why he is the way he is. I said, and it got cut so many times. And I said, I need to put something in there so people will have a bit of sympathy for him. Your mom who is always extremely fair and generous, and she goes, no. She goes, there's just some people you got to hate during this time. You just got to let him be the way he is. You just got to let him be the way he is. And so, is he beyond redemption? Nobody's beyond redemption, and I'm glad I have that character in there.
There's a character who we all kind of hate.
Yeah. But
I love Tabitha's character because how you wrote, like, literally just those first 2 chapters, you see her really vulnerable side, and I think it's really relatable to a lot of women too. And
why do you say that? Why do you think it's relatable to a lot of women?
I think because of the way she connects to her family and just these small bits we get into her personal life. And I think it's the way you describe the setting in which she's in, and her grandmother. There's something about that. The grandmother and her relationship to her that shows the softness. And just her thought process as you ease into chapter 2. But, I think I told this to somebody else. I said, I can see myself in this character in so many ways. And I think, I would say a lot of women probably do. Even if their story is not linear, I think there's so many attributes and just the thought process and this like kind of tug of war that she has going on that so many of us experience, and maybe it's a different situation, but I was just obsessed with those first 2 chapters, how it was like, oh, soft, and then, wow, wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, well, I like that you said that, because you're a definite demographic, and you're very closer to age her than I am. And so it is interesting to go back and think about our past. So I'm glad to hear that it is relatable to, women your age, and that is really, really good. I also wanted to make a juxtaposition in the fact that it is in the 1974s, but it rings very much like 2025, 2026. But in all that, it every period of time you think about it, and this is fascinating to me, Anna Gray. So I'm here in 2026, but I reach back, how many years? 58 years, because I'm going to say that's where my memory started, even though I'm 63. I can start remembering things. I reached back 58 years, so I know what it was like back then. I look at this character with Tabitha. Her parents, were children of the 50s. And there was such a thing going on between the 50s and the 70s. The 50s, everybody wore gloves, everybody was prim and proper, and it's, when I say that, that's a generalization, but not too much, No,
kind of like the early 1900s in the flapper era.
Yes, there was a big change.
Yeah.
And you think about it, it was a big change. And even the flapper era, you're talking, there were people on farms living the Depression, starving, and then they're the flappers. So there's this big change.
Culture clash.
Always, culture. And then you think about those flappers, I never thought about it, they were born when, daddy and mommy were driving carriages and not cars. So you think about like what difference happens in the generations, and 3 generations. And so the book deals with 3 generations. But it's amazing to me. It is, even my nonfiction deals with that. We go back maybe 3 generations, if not 4. And you think about all the letters that you found that started your creative journey. Was it with your great aunts?
Oh man, there were some letters in there. It was my great grandmother, but there were like some letters, but like tons of sepia photographs. But you could kind of piece together the story from that.
But it's just fascinating to think the difference. But at the same time, there's a lot of similarities.
Yeah. So what was like the biggest challenge in writing the book? Because obviously life had a lot of different seasons, but... that's funny that you say that, because everybody, like even my farm guy who walks in, he'd walk in the house and he would head straight to... like when I'm writing, he heads straight to the office, and he'll stand there like when I'm typing, because I'll just go and type, and then he'll interrupt. Like when I'm writing, people don't go beyond that door. Like even your mother can't. There's like a force that was like, stop, do not come in.
She showed up at the house one time, and she stood at the door, and I didn't even know she was there. And then I stopped, and she goes, Renee. So the hardest thing. You're asked the hardest thing about writing?
Yeah, biggest challenge or the hardest part?
Well, I tend to write, it seems like when I write, there's really great craziness going on in my life. Or not great craziness, but something's going on with a person that's affecting the family. And
just thinking about dogs barking, COVID, and everything.
All that.
Trees falling on houses.
But also relational. It's usually relational stuff. And I somehow, in all that, that's my lifeline, to just keep persevering in the story. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's soothing to my soul or not. But the biggest challenge was definitely whittling it down, getting it as sharp as possible, asking a lot of the reader, because there's a lot of neat things. I have a play with coincidences and what I don't think are. So it was neat trying to find, and then it wasn't really difficult. It was more magical, because I would be looking for a twist of thing, and I would be thinking, what would that be? And then you realize it has all along been in chapter 1 or 2. And you would bring it forward into the very end, and you would go, oh my goodness, I had it all along. And that seemed to be the word the Lord was saying to me about a lot of things. It's like, you've had it all along. You know, I've had, like, Lord, I want to feel your love. I want to love you. And I've had it all along, all these things. So I think, if anything, it wasn't as much as the challenge is just trying to fit it into life when things are going crazy. But also, and, you know, it's just like photography. It's just like the work that you do. You show up no matter if you feel like it or not, you know. And so, you know, the discipline of it is not difficult to me, but you definitely have to be in that discipline. You know, you have to stay the course.
Did you experience, like, I don't want to say imposter syndrome, but I know for creative souls, which everyone's technically creative, but especially like within, I think, the arts, you know, whether it's writing, music, there's something so vulnerable about it. And what I mean is, like, I don't want to sound abstract, but I think that art really is an extension of your soul in a lot of ways. I mean, for some people it's just commercial, they just show up, do it, and there's not that a strong emotional tie to it. But obviously, like, a lot of your own experiences from life, and it sounds like even maybe from some, like, harder points of life, you kind of channel into the book. Even if you haven't, you know, experienced it directly yourself, there's a lot that's really personal to you.
There's a lot in there that, when I say it's not autobiographical, it is definitely situations that I've found myself in, similar things. You know, so yes.
Did you find yourself in the saturated market of artists? I don't say that in a critical way. I love that people put their hearts out on the line and create, because it's not, I don't think, for me personally, it's not easy, especially if it's something that's really something you care about. It's like falling in love, kind of, you know, your heart might get rejected. It might get you know,
lay it on the line. You are walking.
Might be loved, it might not. And art, I think, is the same way. And writing I think
it's exposure.
It's so, it's so expository.
Exposure.
Did you feel that way?
I never thought about that, because that's a photography word. It's very exposing. And that is the joy of creating it's unexplainable. I don't know about you. I know you do. Because you know, when you do something, the light works and da-da-da. And
you're just like, yes,
you're just like, yes. And then you go, oh yeah, I better show the client my pictures now. Or, I mean, photographs. Or I have to let people read it now. And that was the thing, is you're reading it and you're going, wow, this is so much fun. This is what and you're honing it. And then you realize you get it out there. You get it in an actual book. And then you realize, now people have to read it. And it's total exposure.
I remember when that first box came to your house. We have a video of this.
And here I am.
On Instagram.
I'm worried. And what was I worried about? The typo.
There were, like, it was funny because you had this huge anxiety. And when you said what it was, I was like, the one typo?
Yeah.
I don't think I would even notice that.
It was two.
Okay, my bad.
But the deal is, and I'm sure there are more, because that's the way it works. But the funny thing is, I let that be the driving. I wasn't going, oh, yay, hey, yay. I was going, where is it? You saw me. I was frantically looking for it.
You have this beautiful published book, and the first thing Renee is doing, and this is, I don't know if we recorded this or not, but you're just like flipping through, like, I've got to, you know, it wasn't like, Marvel at the Beauty is like, where's the mistake? Did you feel that way in editing it, though? Like, being surrounded by so many other artists and writers, like, because I know, okay, I haven't been to a writing conference, but we've done, like, NRB convention, where suddenly or at least I can feel like a mutt among beautifully groomed poodles. We
had no idea what we were doing there.
No, I remember sitting in the hotel room.
But we did well.
Literally almost crying on the floor, thinking, I don't belong here. I'm a newbie. I'm a rookie. I don't know what I'm doing. I remember there was a shiny guy, like, being interviewed with, like, his hair slicked back. Good Christian media.
We weren't in it.
But did you ever feel that way in the world of authors? Because I feel like in the arts, there's always this like hierarchy.
Yes.
And that's like the angel and the devil on your shoulder where you're like, okay, everyone has their subjective opinions. What do I believe? What do I not believe? I want my work to be better, but I want it to be true to myself. What was it like for you?
I think in the long run, we all have to get to the point, and you have to break it to your kids at one point. There will always be someone smarter, prettier, richer, more dynamic, more fit, blah, 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 than you are in their eyes. I said the thing is, you have to walk and just keep persevering. You don't stop because somebody else is doing it.
Oh, say that again.
You don't stop because somebody else is doing it and you think better. You do it because your heart and your mind and your soul says, let's do this. So I can look at the abundance of books on Kindle and I could get squashed. I can look at my numbers on Kindle and get squashed. I can do all these things. However, when you put it out, it's almost like the podcast thing. What was the podcast thing, the one thing that people kept saying to us?
Oh my gosh, from the people that we probably have like 500,000 subscribers.
Well, no, but they would say, most people talk about podcasting.
Oh, but they never do it.
They never do it.
Yeah.
So the deal is...
We press the record button and here we are.
I think there's a bit of guts that you have to have in all things creative, whether you're designing a house or designing a room or you're designing a new car or a motor or whatever the case may be. There's great creativity in it, and you're going to have pushback or not, but it's going to feel exposing, and you just have to keep going, and you just have to, you really just pray through it, and then you go, okay, I'm not as big as this other person, and you just have to go, okay, I've given it my best. I've worked hard on it. Not that anybody cares. Nobody else, except for you, cares that I spent 8 years on this. Nobody else cares. No one's going to...
I've seen this so many blood, sweat, and tears.
Well, it's not there's no vanity reads here. People don't... That doesn't do anything. It's like the Lord of the Rings could have taken 15 years, and you don't watch it for that. You watch it because it's a great story. And so... But in all that, you just have to keep pressing forward and just realize, I had to make peace. I shook hands with the Lord. I said, Lord, what you do with this, I'm going to do everything I possibly can to get this out here and tell a good story and love on people, because in the end, abortion is a very hard subject. And there are people who are walking there and just waiting for someone to tear them down for having one. When in our churches, I think the statistic was years ago, 1 out of 4 persons have abortion.
1 out of 4?
Yeah, in our churches.
Oh, wow.
In our churches, in our church pews, 1 out of 4. That was a statistic, I forget where. So the deal is, how do I want to come along? And this is not a book that's, out to get anybody. It's out to tell Tabitha's story and her journey, and so, excuse me. I think the thing is we press on, we give it to God, and even the success to God. Like, people are going to like it, people are going to hate it, I don't know. So far, I've had really great responses, and I really appreciate it. I was going to
say, the responses that I've heard is I couldn't put it down.
I have, that has been the...
So when my copy came, I was like...
Yeah, I hear this, I do hear this, and this is not braggy, but it's like, it was 1:30 at night, and I finally had to shout it, and I'm like, yay, Lord!
Yes!
But in all that, you just have to give it to the Lord, and if you're a Christian, you just have to give it and say, okay, the success of this will be the success of this as He sees fit.
Well, I think that's such a challenging place to be in too, because anything that you're creating, I think that's coming from your imagination and that you're pouring your blood, sweat, and tears and soul into, when there's not a promise like return on investment on it. I don't just mean monetarily, but it's like when you write and you're wanting people to feel what your characters are feeling, and the message that you're wanting to convey, like in a really authentic way. There's, Noah said it before, but it's like putting your heart out on the line. And I just think it's so, I think it's so brave, but it's like there is such a risk with that too, and especially with the topic. So I'm curious, like, what do you want people, when they finish reading the last chapter, like what, at the end of the day, when they close the book and they finish up, do you want them to walk away with? Or like,
well, I say it in the very last line of the acknowledgments. And it says, may you, dear reader friend, wonder as I did, what if it's true?
Whoa.
And that's what I want them to do.
That is clickbait right there.
Yeah, that's what I want them to walk away. What
you want curiosity at least stirred in their heart?
Yeah, and then like have an openness. What if it's true?
You know, I think abortion, like you said, is such a difficult subject to tackle. And the only way I can relate is there was a short film that I was in about 2 years ago. Well, it's funny because I've been, I guess now, 2 abortion-related projects. I'm like, is this my character? I've been pregnant.
In 2 movies.
I was creating my demo reel, and I think I said I'm pregnant 3 times. But there was a short film 2 years ago that was actually written like from secular, producers and writers, and I was also shocked as much as when I was reading chapters 1 and 2, where I was like, whoa, I was not expecting that. When we did a cold read, we just did a read through for like just everyone, like kind of a table read, no sort of rehearsal. And I was like, the more we got into the script, I was like, I didn't see that coming. But my character wants an abortion in this particular short film. At least that was the subject matter of it. But somehow they weren't even necessarily driving home a bias from this, because the crew and writers and producers were a blend of different like religious beliefs, agnostic, but it's in the film you see the resistance of, is this life? Is it not? Yeah. What makes it life? What makes it not? And just a really huge tension between my character and her significant other regarding this issue, and somehow
he was the significant other was opposed to it, right?
Yeah, because he sees this text roll in, and I won't spoil everything from there, but it was really interesting because, and also like in high school for debate, I remember I was like the pro-choice side, so I'm like, how do I keep landing here? But it's really eye-opening, and it showed me such a unique perspective, and being able to talk about something that people can get really heated about. And when they did a showing of it, I'm thinking, I don't know like how people are going to receive this. And it wasn't like this huge thing, right? Like this was a smaller like short film, but they did have like a screening of it. But it was really fascinating, like hearing people's questions and seeing it on the screen.
To actually talk about it.
Yeah. And I'm not saying this to point it to, this is a short film, but taking it to a book, it's not easy. It's not easy to.
I admire the director and the writer for doing this. Because they did it in a really true way. And having, the question I have heard of people, and different people that I'm very familiar with, where one does and one doesn't. And that is real conflict.
Yeah. Really authentic conversation too.
And it's playing out every day. That same scenario every day is being played out, and one does not want, one wants an abortion, one does not. So, the fact that we're talking about it, and I think it's the greatest thing. And that's my hope, that people read it and talk about it, just like we're talking about it, because it's very, 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 it is the subject of our times. And if you study the Bible long enough, you will see the heart of God, that He just adores creation. And, do we have the right to destroy it? I say no, we don't. But more than that.
Does your book tackle that question?
Do we have the right to destroy it? The whole issues are what is life? When is life? What is life? How is it? And this is 1970s. In the 1970s, we did not have the information we now have concerning heartbeats, brain waves, all the things. The idea of a clump of cells was a clump of cells. It was very, very spoken to us, and as we're going to talk in some other episodes with, we hope one day.
Oh yes,
subverted. That's our game. But
it's like the twin to this one, the nonfiction twin.
Yeah, it would be, but to talk about it in that way, and to we know so much more. We know so much more, and then the big question to ask, because we know so much more. It doesn't seem like it faces people. Even with knowledge, it's still chosen, And so I think these are topics that we need to explore. And I'm really grateful that we're going to be doing this on the upcoming podcast.
I think that having your novel as our opener, I keep wanting to pick it up because it's just it's actually tangible.
It's a beautiful cover.
I feel like the light is not doing it justice, but... Yeah. So, okay, what would you say to someone who maybe is in that 26-year gap? And maybe that's metaphorical too. Maybe it's not quite that long, but there's something they feel challenged to do, something that they can't get out of their head, they're really passionate about, but they're feeling some resistance.
Yes.
What would you say to on that? What would you say? I'm speaking Latin.
Well, no, but it's a great time of the year. It's January, and the timeline is perfect to pick this up because this is starting in January. I would say to them, take a deep breath and wonder, what if you stepped out in small ways to start that dream? You picked up singing after all these years. And your years were considerably shorter than mine. What is the next good step that you could take towards that dream? Mm-hmm. If you're feeling oppressed, why are you feeling oppressed? Or stifled would be more is your loved one encouraging you not to do this, and why? Look at that, and then you have to reconcile that as well. But at the same time, don't be shy. Be bold. Be courageous, and step out and do it. Make the phone call. Get the book out. Create the thing that you want to do. Get the canvas out. Get the paints out from the attic. That kind of thing.
Do you think that sometimes the hardest part is just the getting started?
Just the getting started.
I feel that in my own life with things because, like you mentioned, I took almost a decade off from anything music, anything acting. I just thought, okay, that's of the past. That was just my teenage and early 20s, and it's over. And it was that, small step that doesn't necessarily feel good, and where you think, oh, this feels so minuscule. Because I think we want things.
Well, I think
we want the published book overnight, but it's work to get there, and it's fighting so many voices of resistance, both in here and then outside.
But I think in the day by day doing it, you have to start with a word to get a book, and you have to start, and you add 84,000 words to it. So the deal is just start somewhere, start the first step. And you did by going to see your vocal teacher and starting to sing. And quite frankly, I haven't seen you this lit up in a long time.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
You glow within. There's a confidence in you. There's a peace in you because you feel, I guess, more rooted in who you are and who you were created to be. Yeah. A creation who creates. That is the story of God. He's given us these things.
And I think that's we so often suppress it. And I think to see this, after 8-9 years of so much hard work, it's not only is it an amazing story, should it be any other author writing it, but also knowing just how many challenges and obstacles you faced to get here. But
I also want to say something. I think sometimes, I see what you're saying too, where we were going with this. Sometimes I think that we feel like, oh, if it's not going to happen overnight and I'm not going to get a Broadway production, then therefore it's not value. But when we could find out, okay, well, there's still X amount of readers who will read this book. There's X amount of people who will come see you sing chorally, and even when you're doing your solos. You know, we always, culture has trained us, if we're not getting, you know, 2,000 views on our reels, then why bother? You know, or whatever the case.
Takes the creativity out of the process, which is so big.
But that's part of the fun. Are you not having fun refining and redefining and learning that you can sing alto,
alto, mezzo, soprano?
How about that? I mean, but are you not having some of the best time?
It's amazing. Had? It's literally like language immersion. It's like so much learning, and it's like that small step for myself was literally just seeing a vocal teacher. What can my voice do again? Does it suck? Can I do anything?
Yeah,
and then you build these connections and like, you know, things that I could only dream of. Not that I'm saying I'm on Broadway, but just like even an upcoming production. I'm like, what? We're like, get to sing with the Greensboro Symphony?
I know. And the Tanger out. I'm not Tanger out.
And I'm not
Tanger.
But it's, you know, I had the same thought process bringing music back into my life again. I just thought, is this worth it? Like, is this silly?
Yeah.
I was 27, I guess, at the time, or 28, 27. And I just felt stupid. And like, but I thought I need to do this. And something in me was like, this is actually not in my budget technically right now. But I feel like I need to take this actually out of my savings because I feel like this is an investment. And so I guess to echo your words, you know, I think so often we see the other things in life as investments are worthwhile. And we sort of can put these things on the back burner.
Yeah, because we're thinking ROI and all this.
Right.
I think what we need to do is not fear being a beginner. And we start somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, because before I got to this, I entered a bunch of contests, you know, in writing programs where I would write the first 15 pages of screenplay or the first 15 pages of a novel. And that's what they would want. And so as an unpublished person, I would win an award. You know, and so you would just keep doing it, and you just keep. But I think we're afraid to be beginners.
Yeah,
and the
growing pain is,
and you know, it's
squeamish and new territory.
I could say, wow, you can look at other people and go, people who are my age have written bucket loads of books, and I'm like, oh wow, I really admire them. I wish I'd stayed the course. However, I don't know what the Lord had, but I did a lot of growing during there. And the thing is, we just stick to it. And who knows how much time I have, how many more I will get out.
Yeah, and we're not promised tomorrow.
We're not.
So
but at the very least, we enjoyed today.
So where can we find copies of Tissue?
This, the softcover is on Amazon. The Audible is coming out. Yay!
Woohoo! Ooh, what kind of voice?
Oh, your mom and Lily, our production assistant, she got to help choose it.
I heard of the process. Okay.
And then the hardcover is available at ingamepress.com.
Awesome.
So, yes.
Yay! Okay. Wow.
Cheers.
Cheers.